we'll definitely start watching it. Let's see what this is about. A mystery in Galesburg. This happened 2 months ago? Well, you know, you said it happened a couple months ago. Put on y'all thinking caps. We're gonna piece this shit together. We don't need no help. We're gonna do the police job right now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another true crime deep dive. Now, this case is unique as far as my deep dives go because it was requested through TikTok. I usually don't look at my mentions there, but for some reason on this particular day I did. I was tagged in a video about a young man named Tyler Smith who died in Galesburg, Illinois in September of 2018.
Bro, I don't know where this I know exactly. 24, ever since Shade has said the first 24 hours, it has been haunting me. Everybody keeps coming with 24 hours. We cannot do a 24. I have to plan for a 24 hour. Like, I gotta clear the schedule. Like, make sure it's nothing. Like, nothing. We're gonna do a 24 hour one day, though.
I did about an hour of research, and the case reminded me of another young man who also died in Illinois 4 years prior. Praveen Verghese. Now, I covered Praveen's case a few years back.
Wait, I thought we were
developed
talking about
a relationship
Tyler
with his mother, Lovely, who has been fighting for justice. Justice for her son tirelessly since the moment he died. And Lovely even joined Derek and I at CrimeCon, where we did a presentation about Praveen's case.
Hi guys.
This is Lovely Verghese. If you saw our panel yesterday,
hey!
You already know who this woman.
I've seen him before. Is he an actor? Or does he just have a familiar face?
Is and how amazing she is, but we're going to talk to you today about her son Praveen's story. In Tyler Smith's case, he also has a mother fighting still for justice and answers after losing her only son. And I was able to get in touch with Tyler's mother, Sandra Halsney, and we have talked during the time I researched what happened to Tyler. She was able to provide me with a lot of materials that are hopefully going to help us put together what happened to Tyler. 23-year-old Tyler Smith was found dead in Cedar Fork Creek on September 15th, 2018. He was lying face down in 2 inches of water, and the official cause of death was drowning. Within just a few days of finding Tyler's body, the Galesburg Police Department had issued a press release stating that there was no evidence of foul play and that Tyler's death was accidental due to him being intoxicated, I guess, and falling down into the water, 2 inches of water. But Tyler's family have highlighted multiple issues with the initial investigation, if you can even call it an investigation, and personally, I wouldn't call it a thorough investigation. Tyler's parents have even gone so far as to have him exhumed so that a second autopsy could be done. They've also brought in a private investigator who does not share the theory of the police. And no matter what way you look at this case, it's very clear to see, in my opinion, allegedly, the police did not conduct anything close to a thorough investigation here. Not at all. Tyler's family has uncovered evidence that what happened to him was being viewed as an accident right from the get. That important evidence was overlooked and not gathered because it was being written off as an accident. But there's multiple facts and details that show Tyler's death was certainly not that straightforward.
Well, tell me
This is a crazy case, and it's going to infuriate you, especially when I play audio of a meeting that Tyler's parents had with law enforcement and other officials just 2 months after their son was found dead.
Those things like that, we was just wondering because when we ask questions like just get answers. I don't know. Just get answers, and then we come to you and you sit back and you go, what the fuck you want me to do? I mean, and it's,
well,
I mean, it's very hard.
I'm kind of at that point where I have to ask, how much more?
Well, that'd have been fine to say how much more.
How much more?
Different.
Because there's been so much that's been dropped. The ball has been dropped.
What?
Checking the videos, going and investigating anything, because from day one it's been an accident.
If I go talk to the bartender, what's the bartender going to tell me?
She's going to say, okay, they were here at this time. It's going to help them with a timeline. You don't even have a timeline.
What do you mean we don't have a timeline? A timeline of what?
A timeline of what happened? Where he was? How did he get there? When did he leave? I thought that's basic investigation. Like, that's literally the groundwork, the first step.
They don't even remember what bar they went to first or second or third. They went from bar to bar to bar to bar.
I thought Robbie remembered.
No, they don't. They're like, I can't. They didn't even remember. None of them even said they went to bar 65. We had no idea. Did you even know they were in bar 65?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, well.
The bartender emailed me because we have a flyer out for information.
And they emailed you that? Yeah,
yes, they were there from 9 to 9:30.
9 to 9:30.
In that little clip I just played you can hear Tyler's father and mother just looking for some answers to lingering questions and being treated very disrespectfully by Sergeant Van Aken of the Galesburg Police Department. So, we have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Surfshark VPN.
W sponsor.
Time of Shark VPN and a lot of madness and good there's you could talk whatever. I'm Surfshark. Now I have. So before we thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. Okay, so before we start, I know my setup is a little different. Usually I don't have all this stuff on my desk, but right now I have police reports, I have autopsy reports, I have notes, I have a bunch of things that I want to refer to as we go through this video. And the next one, I also have my computer up here because we are going to play some more audio from that meeting. Okay. And I want to sort of listen to some of these clips again with you as we go through it. So there's so much that pisses me off about the way that the Galesburg Police Department treated Tyler Smith's parents. There's so much that pisses me off about it. So I really wanted to be reminded of all the reasons why I was pissed off again in real time as I'm filming this video for you. So that is why my desk is a little bit cluttered right now.
That a hickey? What the fuck you been doing?
But bear with me. So let's talk about Tyler. Tyler Smith was born on September 12th, 1995 in Rochelle, Illinois. Aww. With a population of under 10,000, Rochelle definitely has that small town feel. And Tyler grew up on a street where many of his friends and even cousins lived. So he was always outside playing with them, whether they were riding bikes or playing sports. He was an outside kid. Right. And even as a small child, Tyler always had a big group of friends around him from all walks of life and with varying interests. His friends described Tyler as the glue that held them all together. And every year, they knew that the place to be on Halloween was Tyler's house because Tyler loved Halloween. He and his buddies would get their fill of trick-or-treating before heading back to his place for a Halloween party and a haunted house. Tyler was also very active and athletically gifted, and throughout his school years, he played a lot of sports, including basketball, baseball, and soccer, but as he grew older, football became his passion, and he played all 4 years for Rochelle Township High School. A shining example, on and off the field, Tyler did well academically and managed to focus on football while still keeping his grades up and working a job at Alfano's restaurant. Okay. Tyler never said no to an adventure, and as he got older, he tried and excelled at things like snowboarding and skydiving. And upon graduating from high school in 2014, Tyler embarked on his next adventure. He made the decision to join the Army National Guard, an endeavor he was also successful in, winning 2 Army Achievement Medals. In 2018, Tyler graduated from Western Illinois University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a minor in homeland security. From here, Tyler traveled to the West Coast, where he began an internship with the San Jose Police Department from January of 2018 to April of 2018. And Tyler loved living in California. He actually planned to move there and start his career as a police officer. He would tell his mother, Sandra, that California was so beautiful. It was like being on vacation every day he got off work. Okay. And in August of 2018, he got his wish when he was asked to join the San Jose Police Department, being one of only 50 applicants out of 5,000 who had been accepted. Now, at that time, Tyler was 22 years old, and he had spent his life focused on fulfilling his dreams and blazing his path through the world. He was in the best shape of his life. He had a strong group of friends and a loving family around him to support him, and all the pieces were falling into place to create the life that Tyler Smith had always dreamed of and pushed himself to achieve. Right. Tyler had plans of moving to Concord, California, beginning his career as a police officer, falling in love, starting a family, and being there to show his children and wife love and support. He was especially looking forward to coaching his kids' sports teams and being a father and a man that they could look up to, admire, and model themselves after. Now, I do want to share a few clips of Tyler with you because I watched many of them, and I've gotten the impression that Tyler, although big and strong and burly, would become an absolute little boy around animals and small creatures. And he had this deep, rich laugh that was so pure and innocent. I can just tell that he had a huge heart, and he gave himself and he gave love freely to those around him. I can also tell that he loved to laugh. He loved to play around, joke, have fun. Tyler Smith loved life, and he had an amazing one to look forward to.
We're friends.
Merry Chrysler.
Merry Chrysler.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas.
Tyler was scheduled to leave for California on Monday, September 17th, 2018. The plan was for him and his mother, Sandra, to take a road trip together, driving out there to get him settled and taking in all the scenic views on the way. Sandra and Tyler were best friends. They even shared a birthday month, with Tyler being on the 12th and Sandra on the 13th. But first, Tyler had to complete one final drill weekend in Macomb, Illinois. Now, drill weekends occur one weekend out of every month during the year.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get my charger.
Saturday and Sunday, and typically include training sessions where soldiers can train in combat skills, physical fitness, and their MOS, or military occupational specialty. For Tyler, that weekend would also consist of him finalizing the paperwork that would initiate his transfer to a National Guard unit in California. It was a 2.5-hour drive from Rochelle to Macomb, and the drill started promptly at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday, September 15th. So Tyler decided it would be better if he stayed with his friend Evan, who would also be attending that drill weekend. Now, Evan lived in Galesburg, Illinois, which was less than an hour from Macomb. So Tyler figured it would be easier to drive to Galesburg and then crash with Evan so that their drive the next morning was shorter and he wasn't getting up before the sun on Saturday morning to drive 2.5 hours from Rochelle. Now, before leaving home, Tyler celebrated his 23rd birthday. Then he got in his car and he drove to Galesburg, not knowing that he would never return and that his bright and promising future would never come to fruition. At around 6 p.m. on Saturday, September 15th, a pedestrian walking by with his wife and child called police saying he thought there was a body in Cedar Fork Creek. Now, Cedar Fork Creek is not actually a creek. It is a concrete drainage ditch. And here's a video that Sandra Halsney has shared to show the area where Tyler was inevitably found.
Damn.
So you can see he was found in a drainage ditch that runs through the city of Galesburg. He was 17 feet down, feet up against the wall, and half his body in the water, head facing the flow of the water.
This concrete drainage canal has a sheer wall that goes up about 16 feet. And on top of that, there's a roughly 3-foot railing to prevent people from falling in or walking off. As a warning, I'm about to show you a picture of the bottom half of Tyler's body taken at the scene. And in this photo, you can see that Tyler's feet were only a couple inches from the wall. He's wearing white sneakers. This is going to be important, so put a pin in it for now.
Those are clean,
Tyler
too.
was laying face down in a prone position with his arms at his sides. His head and torso were submerged in about 2 inches of water. His legs and feet were on the concrete bank, which was dry.
Wait a damn minute. They say he drowned in that little bitty ass water? This grown tall man that played sports? They said that he drowned? Stop. Bro, come on. Y'all aren't even trying. Bro. What?
More about what happened when police arrived and what they observed, but first, I want to talk about this timeline leading up to Tyler being in this concrete drainage ditch. Specifically, how did Tyler Smith drive to Galesburg for a drill weekend,
right,
a simple thing, something he'd done before, and then end up dead in a concrete drainage ditch? Like, what happened in between? I also want to be very clear that this timeline we are about to go through was mainly put together by Tyler's parents after his death. They were able to piece it together using his texts and phone information, his bank activity, as well as tidbits of information gathered after talking to some people and doing an investigation that the Galesburg Police Department should have done. And you're going to hear in these clips, and I think you did in that first clip, where Sandra's like, hey, like, you know, you can put together a timeline. And they're like, what timeline? What for? What are we going to do? It's absolutely ridiculous. The Galesburg Police Department did not do the legwork or the investigative work in order to figure out Tyler's movements the night of September 14th. And why did they not do this thorough and full investigation? Well, because they did something that no law enforcement entity should ever do. They assumed Tyler's death was accidental, and they investigated it as such, which means basically no investigation. And anything they did do was pretty much done after pressure was brought on them by Tyler's family. Tyler arrived in Galesburg around 6 p.m. on September 14th, 2018, which was a Friday night. And we know this because he texted a friend to tell them that he was there. And he also called his mother, Sandra, shortly afterward at 6:03 p.m. to let her know that he had arrived safely and that he and a few friends were going to grab something to eat. Tyler also spoke to his father, Keith, just before 7 p.m. Now, like I said, that night, Tyler was going to be crashing at his friend Evan's house, and then they were going to drive into Macomb the following morning for the drill weekend, which started promptly at 7:30 a.m. And if you're a part of any sort of military establishment, the National Guard, anything, you know being on time is kind of important. If you're not on time, you're going to be doing something you don't want to do, like running laps, doing push-ups, who knows. So Evan had known Tyler for 3 years. They'd gotten especially close in that last year, and they were both in the same National Guard unit. At 7 p.m. on Friday night, Tyler and Evan were at Buffalo Wild Wings having dinner, and from what I can tell, there's only one Buffalo Wild Wings location in Galesburg, Illinois. That's located at 2683 Seminary Street. While there, Evan claimed that he drank 3 beers and Tyler...
this is serious, nigga. This is serious. We trying to crack the case.
Had 2 beers. At 8 p.m., Tyler and Evan met up with Evan's cousin Robbie at a bar called Duffy's, located at 76 South Cherry Street, which is about an 8-minute drive from Buffalo Wild Wings. Now, Cherry Street, located in the heart of downtown Galesburg, seems to be where a lot of the locals would gather and where there were a lot of bars and restaurants located all in close proximity to each other. Later, Robbie would tell the police that he had parked near Sitka Salmon, which appears to be a seafood market. That's located at 109 South Cherry Street, and Evan parked on the opposite side of that street, but on the same street. At Duffy's, which is a bar, the 3 men shared 3 pitchers of beer, and after having a few drinks at Duffy's, the trio moved across the street to Bar 65, located at 65 South Cherry Street. After that, they ended up at the Cherry Street Restaurant and Bar, which is right next to Bar 65, where Tyler purchased drinks, signing his debit card receipt and paying $18 for those drinks plus a tip at 10:12 p.m. Now, Evan remembered going to both of these bars and buying a round of shots for the 3 of them. After this, it's believed the 3 walked over to Monkey Business, another bar. It's on East Simmons Street, less than 100 yards away from the Cherry Street bars. At 10:42 p.m., Tyler visited the Wells Fargo ATM behind Monkey Business and withdrew $100. This is an important point in the timeline for several reasons, so let's put a pin in that too. At 10:52 p.m., Tyler signed another debit card receipt for drinks at the Corner Connection. This is a bar on the corner of East Simmons and South Prairie Streets. He paid $13.50 for 3 Jack Daniels, which is crazy. That's a crazy low amount to pay for 3 shots of Jack Daniels, in my opinion. But I guess we are talking about 2018 and it's 2025, and there has been inflation, but that's a low amount to pay. Now remember, I said that this timeline was pieced together based on evidence that Tyler's parents found because Evan and Robbie were very little help when trying to give police their movements that night. Reportedly, they were too drunk to remember much of anything that happened. Evan was the one who would report Tyler missing the following day, and when he was spoken to by police, it wasn't until Monday, September 17th, and it was over the phone.
So boom. So far, we're not too far in. There's a young man named Tyler, found dead in this little like ditch creek, but it's not even a creek, it's like a little puddle of water. And the police just ruled it accidental. And they didn't investigate or nothing. So Oh, nigga, you almost got timed out, nigga. You almost got timed out. Oh, you was so quick. You was quick with it.
Phone.
You was quick
Evan
with
said
it.
that he, Tyler, and Robbie had been bar hopping and that the Corner Connection was the last bar they'd gone to. They'd stayed there for about 30 to 45 minutes, during which time he and Tyler each had 3 beers and 3 shots. They each had 3 beers and they each had 3 shots? Evan told police that he did not remember leaving the Corner Connection with Tyler, but his cousin Robbie had since informed him that they'd all 3 left the bar together. The police didn't talk to Robbie until 3 days after they talked to Evan, and they also spoke to him over the phone when they did finally talk to him. Robbie said that by the time he'd met up with Evan and Tyler, they'd both already been drinking, and by the time they left the Corner Connection, Evan seemed more intoxicated than Tyler did. And so Robbie told Evan to give his car keys to Tyler so that Tyler,
hey, don't complain. Go over and show love. What? Use your sub to all your ability.
Could drive them home or whatever, but at least Evan would not be driving home. Now, Evan's keys would be found on Tyler's body the following day. Robbie said they left the bar around 11:15 p.m. Then they all 3 began walking to the 2 cars they'd parked earlier, at which point Robbie broke off from the other 2, and that was the last time he saw Tyler Smith. So let's look at this timeline quickly. We have Tyler visiting the ATM at 10:42 p.m. 10 minutes later, paying for drinks at the Corner Connection. Evan says they were at the Corner Connection for 30 to 45 minutes. So let's say they arrived there around 10:45 p.m. If they left at 11:15 p.m., as Robbie claims, that puts them at the Corner Connection for about 30 minutes. Now, throughout that night, Tyler had been sending Snapchat videos, and this video was taken when Tyler was at Cherry Street Bar and Restaurant.
Bar.
Tyler's mother, Sandra, says that Tyler was seen at this bar between 10 and 10:30 p.m. He then went into Monkey Business for a short time before going to the ATM behind Monkey Business and then ending at the Corner Connection, which, according to Robbie, they left at 11:15 p.m. So after their phone interviews, Evan and Robbie would both voluntarily go in for interviews at the police station, but their timelines and memories from the evening did vary, mainly because they all seemed to have had too much to drink, obviously. For instance, in his in-person interview, Robbie says that when he got into his car, the clock radio said 11:35 p.m., but previously in his phone interview, he said they'd left the Corner Connection at 11:15 p.m. Now, a bartender at the Corner Connection would later tell police that Tyler and his friends had been drinking pretty fast, and he remembered them because he was not planning to serve them any more alcohol based on how intoxicated they already appeared. This bartender said he could not recall what time the 3 men left, only that they were not there when the bar closed. Either way, we don't know how Tyler and Evan were separated.
There's no security cameras anywhere?
And Evan claims he was far too drunk to remember how that happened or why. He doesn't even remember leaving the Corner Connection. Now, according to Evan, he'd never been more drunk than he had been that night, and he believed that Tyler was just as intoxicated as he was. I mean, yeah, when you can go into any given bar in this town and get 3 shots of Jack Daniels for $13, I'm surprised every single person in Galesville isn't walking around drunk all day, every day, honestly. Evan said that as far as he could remember, there had been no arguments or confrontations with anyone that night, which isn't a huge, I guess, credible source because Evan also claims he doesn't really remember much of anything that night. Now, Evan also did not remember Tyler going to the Wells Fargo ATM behind Monkey Business, but he did remember Robbie telling him to give his keys to Tyler, and he remembered doing that, but he couldn't remember parting ways with Tyler, and he did not remember walking to his house, which is located at North Chambers Street. Evan stated that he would most likely have walked home the way of Main Street to North Chambers because that's the route he would usually take. But once again, he doesn't remember walking home. He's just saying, this is where I'd go to usually walk home. And Evan did text his girlfriend Zoe around 11:40 p.m. to let her know that he'd gotten home. Zoe would later confirm to the police that Evan had texted her at 11:44 p.m., but she said the message was all gibberish and didn't make sense because Evan was drunk. Now, when Evan got home, he was locked out because remember, Tyler had his keys. And so Evan had to call his mom, Rita, who he lived with, and his mother confirmed that she let him in the house around midnight. She asked him where Tyler was, and Evan told her he thought that Tyler had gotten a ride from Robbie. Evan then proceeded to pass out on the couch. He's dead asleep, that's it. No waking him up, no rousing him. His mother, Rita, what an angel she is, she stayed up until 2:30 a.m. waiting for Tyler to arrive because she thought he was catching a ride there with Robbie. But when he didn't show up, she went to sleep around 2:30 a.m. So what happened here? What happened between Robbie leaving Evan and Tyler and Evan ending up at home without Tyler? Obviously, we know Tyler and Evan got separated,
just walking home,
but we don't know why. And apparently Evan doesn't either. Did they argue? Was there a disagreement about who was going to drive because they were both drunk? Did they decide they were both too drunk to drive, so they started walking, but they walked off in different directions? Because remember, Tyler's not from here. He's never actually even been to Evan's house before. This is the first time he's been to Evan's house. And so maybe they were like, hey, let's just walk. And they're both kind of drunk. So Evan starts walking in the right direction. Tyler starts walking in a different direction, and by the time they figured this out, they didn't know where the other person was. That's possible. We can track Tyler's movements a little bit through his cell phone communications. At 11:36 p.m., Tyler called a friend named Daniel who lived in Macomb. Now remember, Macomb is where the drill weekend was actually happening. And Tyler, for some reason, seemed to think he was in Macomb because that's what he told Daniel. He was like, I'm here in Macomb, and he asked for Daniel's address, even though Tyler was not in Macomb. He was an hour away in Galesburg. So Daniel gave Tyler his address, and he asked where Tyler was, to which Tyler replied that he was near the police station. Daniel told Tyler he would pick him up, assuming that Tyler meant he was near the police station in Macomb. And Daniel actually left his house and drove around that area for a bit, like driving past the police station in Macomb.
Oh, he was
obviously
really
couldn't
drunk.
find Tyler because Tyler was in Galesburg. There was also a text in Tyler's phone sent to Daniel at 11:41 that said WITBSA and then an underscore 39-minute walk.
Oh, yeah, he was.
That's what the text said. Daniel didn't know what this meant. And I've talked to Sandra Halsney about this, and she thinks that Tyler meant, like, what is this bullshit? It's a 39-minute walk, which, you know, if he was in Macomb, why would it be? But he wasn't in Macomb. But also, if he'd put Daniel's correct address into his GPS, it wouldn't have been a 39-minute walk. So what's going on here? Once again, we don't know. At 11:42 p.m., Daniel got another call from Tyler, but he believed this call was a butt dial because Tyler didn't talk. But Daniel said he could hear the sounds of two people laughing during this 24-second call.
Oh, I thought I was
At 11:46 p.m., Tyler sent a Snapchat message to another friend which said, I don't know where I am. And 4 minutes later, Tyler sent Daniel some pictures on Snapchat. And Daniel described these messages as 3 random pictures, and he believed that they'd been sent accidentally because there was no context. It seemed like they had just come out of Tyler's camera roll. One was a picture of Tyler and his mother, Sandra. So Daniel seems to believe it was almost like a pocket send. Daniel, as well as some other friends, tried to call Tyler and send him messages, but none of these calls were answered and none of the messages were opened. According to Tyler Smith's health data on his iPhone.
Aside from this, because, you know, obviously this is a sad story. If you come together, you leave together unless it's discussed prior to leaving that you have a ride to go with somebody specifically or whatever. Especially being a girl with usually girlfriends. We don't play that separating shit. Like, we come together, we leave together unless it was discussed otherwise, like you was going off with your man or something at the end of the night. I don't know. Because anything can happen, bro. And you not being accounted for and you was by me, that's not how we play it. That's not how we play it. You gonna be back in my car. I don't care. When the night's over, when I leave, you leave. I don't care if you're still having fun or not. Together,
Tyler stopped moving at 11:52 p.m., and it is assumed that this is when whatever happened to Tyler happened. But the timeline does not make a lot of sense. It's roughly a 42-minute walk from South Cherry Street to where Tyler would be found the next day. But if Robbie is claiming that when he got into his car, the clock said 11:35 p.m., how would Tyler have made it from South Cherry Street to Cedar Fork Creek walking in under 20 minutes? So either Robbie is wrong about the time, even though he says that's what his clock radio said, which is more of an indicator of an accurate time than just remembering we left the bar at 11:15, or maybe Tyler didn't walk the whole way. Maybe he got a ride a part of the way and then was dropped off somewhere. He didn't know where he was, and that's when he started walking. Now, like I said, according to Evan's mother, Rita, she fell asleep around 2:30 a.m. after waiting for Tyler to return to the house, but he didn't. And then she woke up at 5 a.m. because she had to take a friend to farmland in Monmouth, Illinois. And then she returned home after bringing this friend where her friend needed to go. She got home at 5:30 a.m. When she got home, Rita woke up her son, Evan, and then they both drove to where Evan's car was parked. Rita told the police that the vehicle was unlocked, and so they assumed that Tyler must have gotten into it at some point the night before or that morning, because Evan remembered locking his car when he parked it before they started going into all these bars.
Okay.
Now, Evan called Tyler at 5:38 a.m., but the call went straight to voicemail. He called him again at 5:45 a.m. and texted him at 6:21 a.m. because remember, they had that drill. It's starting promptly at 7:30 a.m., but Evan never heard back from Tyler. After this, Evan called the Galesburg Police Department and reported Tyler missing. The police called Tyler's phone at 11:31 a.m. and left a message when the phone went straight to voicemail. Evan spoke to Tyler's mother, Sandra, around 4:30 p.m. to see if she'd heard from Tyler. She said she had not. She said she had texted Tyler a few times, and her messages had been delivered, but not read. Now, Tyler's parents, Sandra and Keith, drove to Galesburg that night, arriving around 7 p.m. And this is Sandra Halsney's account of what happened at the police station. Quote, I went in and asked to report my son missing. I was told he was already reported missing earlier that day. I said I wanted to speak to an officer, and they told us all to have a seat in the waiting area. As we were waiting, a pizza delivery guy came in and asked how our night was, and I said, not good. And he said, I'm sorry, is it related to the body they just found in the creek? I asked him, did you just say they found a body in a creek? At that point, I knew it was Tyler. I had this awful feeling. I started to get upset, and a police officer came out and took Keith and I to a room in the back. Keith said, is my son dead in that creek? And he said he couldn't say, as he was not at the scene. I said, I have a picture of him. Can you tell me, is that our son? He said he didn't know. End quote.
Yeah,
Sandra said the police officer told them he believed the body belonged to a young man. And as they sat there and waited for news for hours, Sandra and Keith were asked questions about Tyler, such as what kind of tattoos he had and things like that. And I want you to really think about this for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of Sandra and Keith and consider the torture and anxiety you would be feeling as the minutes ticked by so painfully, so slowly, every second passing, only increasing that cold rock developing in your stomach. Just think about that for a second. Sandra asked if they could go to the scene, but they were told no, and the wait continued. Eventually, several police officers came into the station with Tyler's belongings and told Sandra and Keith that they were sorry, but their son was gone. Sandra says, quote, I asked how, and they said he smelled of alcohol and was found in a creek. Not being from the area, I didn't understand what kind of creek. They said there was no way he fell from the distance he was found, and bodies don't just end up there where he was located. They said he must have gotten down in there somehow and fell and knocked himself out. They explained the train tracks above. I said, do you think he killed himself, like jumped in? And they said, no way. Nor did he have any interaction with the train. I was in shock. I asked to see him and they said no. I asked why not? Don't you need next of kin to ID him? They said no. Officer Scholmer drilled a couple of times with your son and she knew him. Yet later in police reports found that she said she never had contact with Tyler's body. I begged to see him, end quote. Sandra did beg to see her son's body. Of course, as you would. You know, it's kind of one of those things that happens where you can't believe it. You have to see for yourself.
I couldn't stomach
but
that,
Sandra
bro.
was told that Tyler was with the coroner and that his body was considered evidence. So he was in a body bag that was zip tied and on its way to Peoria with the coroner for an autopsy. So we've pretty much gotten to the point where we can now go back and address all the pins we placed and fill in some blanks. For the next few months, Sandra and Keith would fight to get every scrap of information they could from the police. In November of 2018, Tyler's parents filed a formal complaint against the Galesburg Police Department, and it said, quote, "Shortly after learning that my son, Tyler L. Smith, had been found dead in Cedar Fork Creek, it became painfully evident that the direction of the investigation was predisposed to being an accidental death, with very little, if any, consideration given to the possibility of a crime having been committed. Ironically, I was told at the onset that my son's death was an active homicide investigation. As a result, I was not allowed to even see my son's body, nor was I allowed to obtain certain possessions of Tyler's," end quote. Now, Sandra was able to secure several interesting things after submitting a FOIA request. One of these things was a dash cam video from the police officers who responded to the scene of Tyler's body.
Down there close, I was just going in that water, and then because it was deep enough to like view. Yep.
I hate to say it, but is that not like a gas station right there? Like, what is this? This is some type of facility, parking lot, street. I know there has to be a camera like right in this area. Is there not one pointing this direction to see if there was a man that came this way and maybe fell or something? Like y'all didn't look?
No, I think it was accidental. Drunk off of that. He was intoxicated. Yeah, I thought the last time they saw him, it was pretty bad. The guy was just like, "Thank you. Where you guys going?"
This video was taken an hour and a half after the 911.
Oh, GG's. Great. The one time we need them niggas, bro. The fucking niggas just don't. They can't come through.
Call came in. They'd already removed Tyler's body. You can hear them talking. You can hear someone ask, "Was it a homicide?" And then a police officer responds that no, they thought it was an accident. And they had heard he was pretty bad the night before. So before any investigation was done, before the autopsy had even started, the responding and investigating police officers had already decided that Tyler's death was an accident. And therein lies the crux of the issue. This is why Tyler's parents are upset and demanding answers. They believe that the police just didn't feel like spending their time and energy doing the actual work it would have taken to determine whether there was any foul play involved.
Right.
Their formal complaint states, quote, "The lead detective on this case, Detective Todd Olinger, had previously scheduled training classes on September 17th through the 18th, 2 days after Tyler's body was found. He was also leaving on October 26, 2018 for a hunting trip scheduled for the entire month of November.
Damn.
Not to mention the fact that through this time, he was also campaigning for a November 6, 2018 election for a seat on the Knox County Board," end quote. Essentially, what I'm hearing is Olinger's schedule was far too busy to squeeze in an in-depth death investigation, so they called it an accident, did the bare minimum, and then expected the people who had loved and lost Tyler to accept this and move on with their lives. I'm going to be playing audio throughout this video that comes from that meeting that Sandra and Keith had with the Galesburg Police Department on November 30th, 2018. You've already heard a little clip from that meeting in the opening of this video. This meeting is essentially going to cover all the issues that Tyler's parents had with the investigators, with the investigation, or lack thereof. They also hired a private investigator, Mitchell Drake. He was a retired police officer, and they hired him to help them get to the truth, and we will be hearing his opinion as we go through this case as well. Now, the issues began almost immediately. For instance, no crime scene technicians were ever contacted to respond to the scene, so no forensic processing is happening here. And although markers were put down to highlight articles of interest as well as possible evidence, there were no measurements taken from any points of reference. So basically, you wouldn't know where anything was.
Yeah,
Officer Paulsgrove was first on the scene. He observed the body and then proceeded to Water Street, where the access gate to the creek was located. The access gate was locked, but 75 yards east, there was a vehicle access ramp that led down into the creek. It's a very steep embankment. And in order to get Tyler's body out, the fire department had to be called in to cut the bolt on the access gate so they could drive the coroner's van in and load his body into it. Above the drainage ditch, which we're calling Cedar Fork Creek, there's railroad tracks with a dirt path next to them on one side, and on the other side is like grass and Hanson Lumber Company. Someone could walk down either side next to the drainage ditch, but it's not like there's a designated area for people to walk, if that makes sense. There's no path or designated sidewalk or anything like that, which would suggest that this was a common pedestrian area where people would go out for a stroll. In fact, it's a pretty isolated, out-of-the-way area. The police report states that Tyler was neatly dressed in denim jeans, a hooded sweatshirt, and athletic shoes, and in that position, no obvious signs of trauma or injury were observed. Tyler's clothing was wet from the flowing water, but other than that, it was free from dirt or blood. The report stated, quote, there was a small amount of BLS, which means blood-like substance, present in the water under the victim's face, but it was not known at this time whether or not it was the result of injury and or decomposition, end quote. The police collected Tyler's watch, which had a broken band. They collected a vape pen, Tyler's money clip style wallet containing $72, 2 sets of keys, I would assume Tyler's keys and Evan's keys, Tyler's iPhone, and there were a few other items in the vicinity that were also collected which may or may not have had anything to do with Tyler, such as an empty can of Keystone Light, an iron railroad spike, a box of Keystone Light containing empty cans of the beer. There was also a black leather purse containing a bottle of lotion. I don't even want to know what that was there for. Just a black leather purse with a bottle of lotion in it? I think I know what that was for. Yeah, I do.
No.
Although these items are noted as being collected at the scene, there's no indication of where they were collected from the scene, right? Using a driver's license also located at the scene, police were able to identify Tyler and his body was removed from the water. His hands were bagged. Those bags were secured with zip ties. So they ended up determining that the black leather purse was not connected to Tyler, so they threw that out. They also determined that Tyler hadn't been stabbed, so they threw the railroad spike out. Wouldn't you have just looked for blood on that railroad spike? You know, something else could have happened with a railroad spike. He could have been hit in the head with it, hit in the face.
Right,
I don't know. A million things could have happened with that railroad spike. But
just
either way,
cover your
they
bases.
threw it out. Now you would think, since Tyler's hands had been bagged, there was probably a plan to examine them for foreign DNA, you know, get scrapings from under his fingernails, basic forensic police work, but this was never done. Now let's talk about the autopsy, the first autopsy, because there would be 2 done. The first autopsy was done on September 16th, 2018. It describes blunt force injuries to Tyler's face. Quote, on the face, scattered over the bony prominences of the nose, cheeks, and chin, are superficial red abrasions measuring up to 2.5 inches greatest dimension without underlying palpable bony fractures. Blanched skin is present on the left cheek and around the mouth extending onto the chin adjacent to the abrasion. End quote. So Tyler did have these facial abrasions on his nose, cheeks, and chin, which suggested a possible impact with a rough surface. But the absence of underlying fractures, meaning the bones underneath weren't fractured, that could mean that the trauma wasn't extremely forceful. Now, the blanched skin is a whole nother story. There was blanched skin on Tyler's left cheek and around his mouth, and this stood out to me because this can indicate pressure being applied before death, potentially pointing to smothering, restraint, or some other form of compression. Blanching occurs when pressure is applied to an area of the skin.
Okay.
This happens to all of us. I could do it right now, and you could see that if I press on my hand here, it's gonna be a little white for a second.
Well, maybe not all of us. Maybe I'm lighter. Maybe not all of I don't think that applies to everybody. I thought I was gonna see something. I should have knew better.
and then it's going to turn back to normal. I mean, I'm very white already, so maybe I don't have any blanching, but what happens is when pressure is applied to an area of the skin, it causes the blood to be pushed out of all of these tiny blood vessels in that area that are known as capillaries. This makes the skin appear paler or lighter than the surrounding skin, the surrounding tissue. If blanching is noted in an autopsy, especially in areas like the face, neck, or limbs, it suggests that pressure was applied to that area before death, while blood circulation was still active. Tyler also had scattered abrasions on his limbs, such as his right elbow, left wrist, left hand, right knee, and right ankle. They all show minor abrasions, and these could be defensive wounds. They could be indications of falling, or once again, indications of Tyler coming into contact with a rough surface. The coroner determined that Tyler had drowned due to the way he was found, along with other evidence garnered from the autopsy, such as foamy water within his skull sinuses, severe cerebral edema, and muddy fluid within his nares, which means his nostrils, the external openings of the nose. The autopsy report said that the superficial abrasions on Tyler's face and extremities were consistent with a fall, and no internal trauma was present, along with no evidence of assault. Tyler's blood alcohol concentration was measured to be 0.246%, which, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a very high level of alcohol in the bloodstream, and it would indicate severe intoxication. Now, on the day the autopsy was to be performed, Sandra Hosny received a call from Mark Thomas, the coroner, who told her that a forensic pathologist from Peoria was going to do a thorough exam on her son. Sandra asked Thomas if they would check for a brain bleed and if they would x-ray Tyler's entire body. And Thomas said, yes, I said thorough. All of that's going to be done. I said thorough, didn't I? Now, around 3 p.m. that same day, Mark Thomas, the coroner, he called Sandra back and said the autopsy was complete and that Tyler's death was caused by drowning. Sandra was told that Tyler had a small bump on his head and a scratch on his face, and the most likely reason for this would be because Tyler had fallen from being drunk and knocked himself out. It was recommended to Sandra that she not see her son's body until after the autopsy, until it was time for his funeral. And she agreed, but she also said that since Tyler only had a small scratch on his face, she didn't want them to put makeup on him at the funeral parlor. Sandra then spoke to the funeral home director, who informed her that Tyler was going to need makeup because his injuries were more extensive than just a scratch. And on Tuesday, September 18th, Sandra saw her son for the first time since his death, and she said he looked awful. She said, quote, I noticed all the injuries to his face, at least the right side of his face. I never noticed the ones on his left side, as those were not visible as he lay in his casket. The right side of his face, mainly his cheeks, looked like it was very swollen, more swollen than the rest of his face, like he possibly had facial fractures. I could see the very large, deep scrape on Tyler's right side of his face. I could see the bumps on the right side of his head, scratches to his nose, lips, and chin, end quote. Now, based on these autopsy results and the investigation that had been done to that point, the Galesburg Police Department put out a press release on Monday, September 17th, saying that no signs of injury or foul play had been found in the case. Essentially, obviously no investigation had been done to this point. The police hadn't even spoken to Evan or Robbie, the last two people who were known to have been with Tyler the night he died. Or if they did speak to somebody, they spoke to Evan because they spoke to him on that Monday, but they hadn't spoken to Robbie yet. They hadn't received surveillance video from the places Tyler had been to that night or the locations where he may have walked by on his way to Cedar Fork Creek. They really didn't have any evidence that it wasn't an accident besides the autopsy saying that, like, this doesn't appear, he doesn't appear to have been assaulted, right? It's a drowning. The autopsy didn't even really say it was an accidental drowning. It just said his cause of death was drowning. On November 30th, 2018, Sandra and Keith had a meeting with a couple people at the police station, Sergeant Van Aken, Chief Christensen, and Commander Riggs of the Galesville Police Department. Also present was Assistant State's Attorney Kerr. We're going to go through the audio she recorded of this meeting, and as she brings up issues, we're going to address them, and I will explain more about them. This is also going to give you the opportunity to see how dismissively and at times, in my opinion, downright rudely Tyler's parents were treated by the very people who were tasked with finding out what happened to their son, especially by Sergeant Van Aken, who to put it plainly, is an absolute dick who can't even summon the energy to pretend he cares about or understands what these people are going through. Allegedly, don't come for me, Van Aken, but that's just my opinion.
Facts.
Do we have a document that states, we have the police reports up into what you gave us. Mm-hmm. Do we have a document that states what was taken out of Tyler's pocket, like, or who did it at that point? Because I don't see that anywhere. I called the fire. They gave me the report. They said they didn't go down there. It was the police on the scene. So I'm trying to find out where his phone was, what was in what pocket. On the 12th or on the 15th when we were in there, in November 15th when we were there, they had called somebody and he said he thought maybe he took the phone out of the left front pocket, but I'm not even sure who he was at this point. I feel like that's important to me to know if Tyler's phone was in his pocket, out of his pocket. If he was walking down there, he would have had his phone out, things like that.
If we don't know the answer to that question, certainly we can check and find an answer.
As far as I know right now, everything was removed from his pockets. There was nothing besides the washer and style on the ground.
Okay, but we don't know what pockets the things came out of. Like the police officers on the scene.
At this time, no.
No. So we don't know.
I think we can come up with an answer for you.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can try. We can check into it.
Okay.
Sure.
The situation is when we start to process a crime scene and things that come out of a pocket, it's not necessarily documented to the T of what pocket it exactly comes out of. It's property that belongs to the victim, so it's removed from the victim and it's then categorized as what was removed. So a cell phone, wallet, money clip, whatever was in a pocket. So if the officer didn't specify, say, well, these items are out of the left front pants pocket, these items are out of the rear right pocket.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
It would just have to come back to that officer's recollection in reference to what's reported.
Because I actually went today and spoke to the man that was called it in, the 911 call. I spoke to that gentleman because his name was on the police report. I was able to find him, and he said that he stayed with the first officer on the scene, but then officers came pretty quickly after that. He said that he was told to go look over to make sure that was really a body. And he said he did see his watch there, and he said he thought he saw maybe his wallet sitting out. So I'm trying to find out, was his wallet sitting out? Had somebody fumbled through his wallet? Those are the things that, I'm questioning.
Right.
I feel like those are important. That's important information, especially when you don't have any answers at all. Those little things make a big difference to my timeline that I already have going on my own.
Now, this is very frustrating to listen to because Sandra is asking legitimate questions. Not
like
just
they're
about
sitting
what pocket
they're
Tyler's
sitting in the
phone
meeting because they kind of have to. Like they're like, I guess we could find that out. I mean, it's not like that big of a deal. Like, I guess if he remembered, but it's like if he didn't write it down, he didn't write it down. It's like no sense of like empathy, no sense of like care with the case. There's no sense of just nothing. Like you just like fuck it, like. I mean, if it was like, you don't care. It's like that's your whole job is to fucking care.
But where the rest of the items were at the scene, especially in reference to Tyler's body. For instance,
if
we
his
know
wallet
his
was out, why
watch was
was his
found
wallet
down
out?
in the drainage ditch with
What was he doing
Tyler,
with his wallet in
and
the
we
middle
know
of the
it was
creek?
broken, but there's no record to show where that watch was found, like how far it was from his body. Did he fall in there and the watch broke, meaning it would have been right around his wrist, which means even if it broke, if he fell, it would have
still been on him.
Under his wrist, just broken still. If it ended up further away from his body, how did that happen? If he fell face down into the water and his arms were prone at his sides. And you can hear Van Aken say, it's not necessarily documented to the T of where those things come from or what pocket they come out of, and that's just not really accurate, okay? It's not really accurate to say that. At the scene of a death, within those first moments and hours, the police have no idea what they're dealing with. They don't know if they're dealing with a murder, an accidental death, a self-inflicted death. It could be any of these. Right. They also don't know the circumstances which led the victim to the place where they died. That is why police officers are trained to handle every scene like this, as if there could be potential foul play.
Right.
And so documenting where Tyler's belongings were on his person or in relation to his body would be pretty basic and customary protocol. Sandra then starts talking about Tyler's iPhone and the health app that indicated he stopped moving at 11:52 p.m. She starts asking if they were able to obtain other information from Tyler's phone, such as his location and things. And this is the response from Sergeant Paul Van Aken.
Because where's his location? You know the phone track you 24/7. Even if you turn it off, they still track you.
You dumped his phone, you should be able to see that. You can't see that at all?
It's an iPhone, and Apple encrypts everything.
But it should at least show you.
It does not show us anything when we dump the phone.
Well,
I have a recent article right now that's in Police Magazine that indicates the difficulty of downloading or trying to obtain information from an Apple iPhone. You have to understand, Apple is a private company. We don't just get to haphazardly just plug that phone into a program and download every single thing that's on that phone. They don't allow us to.
So what does it download?
What we got was hardly anything. Pictures. If that.
Text messages. Anything?
We didn't even get the text message that he sent that night. It would not give us that.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm just giving you everything I can. Okay. I'm not trying to hide anything. I never tried to hide anything from the beginning of this investigation. Okay.
Now, I'm not denying that I'm technologically challenged. You all know that. I know that about myself. And you can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong. But don't police have access to something called a Celebrite? In an article dated June of 2019, it states, quote, an Israeli company announced it has found a way to break into any iPhone ever made, as well as many Android phones. Celebrite was reportedly the company the FBI used back in 2016 to hack the iPhone of the San Bernardino shooter. The announcement from Celebrite came in the form of an update this week to its website promoting the iPhone hacking technology dubbed UFED Premium as the, quote, only on-premise solution for law enforcement agencies to unlock.
I doubt this fucking law enforcement fucking department has that. Obviously, they don't want to do work, so why would they get a piece of equipment that will help aid them in continuing in doing work? They wouldn't want to do that shit. They don't want that piece of equipment. They just be like, look, we can't break in, so they don't have to do nothing about that. I doubt they have that.
And extract crucial mobile phone evidence from all iOS and high-end Android devices. End quote. This product enables a full system extraction. It lets law enforcement agencies obtain access to third-party app data, chat conversations, download emails, and email attachments, deleted content, and more, end quote. So, if the police were able to use the Celebrite device in 2016 to successfully crack open an iPhone, which is the reference to the San Bernardino case, the police were unable to do this 2 years later in 2018 with Tyler Smith's phone.
Oh,
well,
with
maybe
the
that
same
police station didn't have a Celebrite, you might say, sure.
Oh,
but I worked at Verizon around that 2018 time, and we had a Celebrite to transfer stuff from the customer's old cell phone to their new one. And I know how much information was able to be seen and gathered through those cell phones. It certainly wasn't just pictures. Maybe the Galesburg Police Department didn't have a Celebrite, but I bet if they really wanted to know what was in Tyler's phone, they could have found a nearby police station or a nearby Verizon store. They could have figured it out, maybe even checked with the state police, but they didn't. They didn't want to work that hard or go out of their way because they'd already decided his death was accidental. Just a dumb, drunk kid falling face forward in some random drainage ditch that they have no idea how he got into or why he's there, drowning in 2 inches.
It could be accidental. Like, I don't know where this video goes or part 2 goes. It might not be, but it could be accidental. But it's just like the lack of like investigation, the lack of it's just the lack of everything. It just like makes you side eye it because it's like, okay, but what you want to like make sure for a fact, like, okay, let's be concrete that this was an accident and not the opposite. Like, well, let's just hope it was an accident. It's just like, why are y'all so like adamant about not checking every other avenue or like, seeing the other possibilities? It's a little weird, especially for a police department.
Standing water. So, you heard Sergeant Van Macon say at the end of that last clip that he wasn't trying to hide anything. And this is what he said directly after that.
The questions you're asking, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to answer those questions. I don't think I'll ever be able to tell you why or how Tyler ended up in that creek. I really don't. There's no evidence of any criminal act here. There's no evidence of a criminal act. There is no evidence of a criminal act. I reviewed it.
How many times do you repeat it?
We've looked at this case. I have nothing that indicates there was nothing more than he went into the creek and drowned. A pathology report.
They didn't even x-ray him to see if he had any injury.
I don't handle I don't handle that. I can tell you that the pathologist is an experienced and well-trained pathologist. They've been doing it for numbers of years. There's nothing that killed Tyler besides drowning.
We know that.
Okay. So you knowing that and I knowing that, where am I supposed to go with that case?
First of all, Sergeant Van Aken, why did you have to repeat that there was no evidence of any criminal act 3 times? Like, not just 3 times in that clip, 3 times in a row. Like, who are you trying to convince? Because you didn't do an actual investigation. So in fact, there's no evidence of anything because you didn't go to collect it because you deemed it an accident from the beginning. Sandra and Keith had felt enough wasn't being done from the start. Sandra said that getting in touch with the lead detective on the case, Detective Olinger, was frustrating. When she would talk to him, he would have no answers. And if she suggested a potential investigative path that may have been overlooked, he would ask her, well, what's that going to tell us? Simple things like getting the ATM footage from Wells Fargo was presented as being very difficult, and Sandra was told it could take up to 6 weeks. So Sandra did end up seeing the autopsy photos as well, and she said the first thing that she asked them as she looked at the pictures was what happened to Tyler's face and head. And she says, quote, they told me that it was from laying deceased for so long and it was most likely decomp. I also asked why his arms were down at his sides, but he didn't even try to catch himself. They had no explanation. We also asked the detective to call Mike Martins about the video surveillance. He called him, Mike didn't answer and said he would call him back. We then left and went home. I made several attempts to email the receipt from the ATM to the detective, this is Detective Olinger, but he would not take it. He said he didn't need it, and he also said that Mike Martin's video is only good for the weekend and it was too late. So this is kind of the starting frustration for Sandra Halsney. Basically, she's got questions, right? She's being told, oh, he accidentally drowned, but she's got all these questions that the police should have. And she's being told like, oh, you know, that doesn't matter. Oh, we'll pull surveillance video. I'll call this guy and he's not going to answer. I'll call him back. But maybe Mike Martin, who actually we're going to talk about in a little bit, he owns a business located on the path that Tyler would have walked to get to where his body was found. He's got surveillance cameras outside of his business. And so obviously Sandra and Keith, Tyler's parents, they want these videos pulled for a lot of reasons. For a timeline, like what time did Tyler walk by? Was he alone when he walked by? Did he seem to be completely obliterated as far as being drunk? Was he being followed? Did he seem scared? Was he on the phone? Things like that. They want to know this, so they want this video footage. So apparently Detective Olinger calls Mike Martin. Mike Martin doesn't answer. Detective Olinger's like, I'll call him back. And then later when Sandra talks to him, he's like, we got to it too late. The video was only good for the weekend because, as you know, surveillance cameras usually will film for a dedicated amount of time. It can be 24 hours. It can be 7 days. And then they'll just start rewriting over that footage because they don't just continue filming. And so that's why the first 48 hours of an investigation are the most important, okay? Galesburg Police Department, that's why. Because crucial evidence could be just gone, vanished, erased within that 48 hours, which is what happened in this case. All right, let's continue listening to Sergeant Van Aker getting frustrated with parents who have just lost their son and only want to have some answers as to why.
I'm trying to be reasonable as much as I possibly can, but if I have no indication or no signs of anything but an intoxicated male that's face down in a creek that drowned, where do you want me to start to go with that?
You go to the last 2 people he was with and you bring them in and you question them.
Okay.
Wasn't done.
Okay. That's your opinion on how we should handle an investigation. We contacted them. They told us the story we had. But granted, I'm not going to argue about the fact that the other things could have been taken care of. But the story that they've told us, I can't refute or take away what they're telling me. I can't disprove what they're telling me.
But in the review, when you we have a problem like when you call them in, you call them over the phone. I always think you would call them in. Once it happened, you would bring them in for questioning instead of waiting like 3 days to call them in.
Or 5 days.
Or 5 days to call them in for question, but they were the last 2 guys.
So I guess maybe because I feel
we have to try to contact people. I don't get to magically pick up a phone and just because I dial your number, you answer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes time to track somebody down, even on a phone call.
First of all, it just made me laugh because Sergeant Van Aker's like, what would you have had me do? How would you have had me conduct this investigation? And Tyler's parents are like, well, maybe you could have done this, this, or this. And his immediate response is, well, that's just your opinion of how we should have done it. Well, it's like, why did you ask me what my opinion is of what you should have done in this investigation if you were just going to immediately dismiss it and be like, well, it's just your opinion? So Tyler's parents are like, well, maybe you start the investigation by talking to the last two people who were with our son that night. Maybe you bring them in for an in-person interview and you don't wait days to call them over the phone, at which point you take their statements over the phone. So let's talk about that for a minute. Evan was called by Detective Legate on Monday, September 17th, at which point a short statement was taken. The police didn't call Robbie until Thursday, September 20th, and at that time, a short statement was taken over the phone. Evan and Robbie both did end up going into the police station for in-person interviews, but not until months later, on November 14th, a full 2 months after Tyler died.
Like, how much are you, I mean, you can remember, like, layouts of what you think had happened, and then I'm sure by that time, they've already replayed a story in their head. It might be the truth, it might not be the truth. But after months and something tragic happened, and this is what you're already believing, there's nobody questioning if this is really the truth, or nobody, showing evidence that, like, hey, your times are adding up, or, something like, you gonna run with what you got. Not saying that they're at fault or that they did something, but it's like, they haven't watched the whole thing. You see how I've been locked in. I've been locked in.
And I guess Van Aker's reasoning for not treating these two men as potential suspects was because Evan was the one who had reported Tyler missing. So why would he do that if he was involved? Like, you might think I'm kidding, but this is actually what he says. Okay, this is actually what he says. I'll show you.
Well, they knew where Evan was at. They knew he was at drill. He's the one that reported him missing at 11:30 in the morning. So they knew where he was at.
Right.
Okay, I know he knew where he's at, but he also understand. Evan came to us missing his friend. If Evan would have had anything to do with him being in Cedar Fork, the realism of it is Evan would have never came to us.
Oh, GG's.
If nobody would have came in.
Oh, GG's. Many of criminals have gotten away under this man's leadership. I already know. That town, is running amok of criminals, bro.
And they even reported Tyler missing. Think of it.
Imagine you kill somebody and you call it into the police station like, yo, like, I just seen this, I can't find this person, or I just seen a dead body. And they're like, well, it can't be you. Well, obviously it can't be you because you called it in. Why would you do that? Child.
If no one would have reported your son missing, how long?
I mean, when that couple walked by and found it, him, not it.
I can't sit here and tell you that I'm going to question a guy or interrogate a guy that comes into our department saying, I don't know where my buddy's at. I have no idea where he's at. So I got to stop because I've had these explanations and I know that you're frustrated with me and the department. All I can tell you is that we conducted an investigation.
This mama or this daddy, I need one of y'all to get some backbone. Y'all need a little bit of sass in your life. I ain't gonna lie, sometimes to get things done, you gotta be a certain amount of a bitch. You gotta be a certain amount of sassy. I know people be hating on it. Oh, they're difficult to work with. But sometimes those are the people that are gonna get the answers and that are gonna get people to do shit. Okay? Sitting back and hearing him speak like that, I would have cussed him clean out. First of all, bitch. I would have cussed him clean out. And I bet you he would have moved a little bit. I ain't gonna say he would have did a big, investigation, but he would have moved a little bit. But people with a little bit of attitude, people with a little bit of bitchiness in them, they get shit done. Okay? Ain't no way you sitting here talking to me like this and my son's dead, ho. You not talking to me like this. Especially not about an investigation about how he died. They should have started snapping. What's the worst that can happen? They arrest you? My son's dead. Fuck it. Fuck it. I done lost my heart in human form. Nigga, like, I might even cuss you out real quick. Slam my hand on the table. Something. Put a little bass in your voice.
That was by policy.
No shade to the mother
correct.
and father. They're grieving their son losing. I'm just saying, like, sometimes these people, like, dicks, like these police officers, like, that we're listening to, they don't move if fire ain't under their ass, bro. If there's no fire under their ass, and I'm not talking about just some calls like, hey, like you gotta put flame to booty hole for them to move. Sometimes you need that.
When we are determined, when we get told that it is an accidental drowning.
We haven't been told it's an accidental drowning.
Okay, you've been told it's a drowning, and if you know what, I'm not going to argue with that point. Okay, it's what did the coroner tell you?
He said that it's an unknown.
It's a drowning, unknown. But yeah. if he holds an inquest, you know what's going to come back?
Oh my God, dude!
You see how he talking to them?
All right, so this is where I start to get mad, because this statement was some of the most ignorant and gaslighting behavior I've ever witnessed in law enforcement. I am not sitting here in front of you and saying that Evan or Robbie had anything to do with what happened to Tyler. But to outright say that Evan wouldn't have reported Tyler missing if he was involved is just stupid. Tell that to the women whose husbands report them missing after killing them. It doesn't matter if you, one man, one police officer, feel in your gut that someone didn't have anything to do with something, because that was his buddy, and he seemed upset. The fact is, Evan would have been the last known person to be with Tyler Smith less than an hour before he died. And he should have been brought in and questioned officially until he could be ruled out, until his alibi could be verified. I mean, is this real life? Do I even have to say this?
Literally.
It's insane. And then he's like, oh, I'm not going to question this poor kid who's like clearly hurting. You know, I'm not going to like drill him and interrogate him. Yeah, you're not going to do that, but you're going to treat his parents like shit? You're going to treat Tyler Smith's parents like shit when they are hurting? I promise you, more than Evan. On top of that, the assertion Van Acker makes here that Evan reporting Tyler missing was somehow responsible for Tyler being found sooner than later, it's just not rooted in fact. And it's almost like he's trying to make Tyler's parents not look at Evan sideways because he's like some hero for reporting him missing, or like he's trying to make Tyler's parents feel guilty
because the police didn't
for even
find
questioning him. Like, oh, how long would it have taken if Evan hadn't reported him missing? How long would Tyler have laid there?
That couple would have walked by.
Okay, dude, pedestrians walking by spotted Tyler's body.
Yes.
Them seeing the body had nothing to do with Evan calling and reporting Tyler missing. Nothing to do with that. It's not like they heard it on the news, got Tyler's last known coordinates, and went out on like a mission to find Tyler's body because Evan reported him missing. The fact that Van Acker even says this, it's, do I want to say it's suspicious? I do. I think it's suspicious. And it might not be suspicious because he's covering up for Evan or Robbie. It might not be suspicious because he knows what happened to Tyler. It's suspicious because I think he knows he did a shitty investigation, and not him specifically, but his police department did a shitty, half-assed investigation, and he's being defensive now. He's being defensive, and he's like straw manning, you know, Tyler's parents. He's bringing in all of these like extraneous variables and honestly outright not being honest about the way that Tyler's body was found. Like, oh, if Evan hadn't reported him missing, how long would he have laid there? Like, first of all, you don't even say that to parents. You don't even like bring back the image of their son laying dead in a drainage ditch alone. And you certainly don't do that to try to prove to them that the guy who was last with their son wasn't questioned properly at first because he reported him missing, so he couldn't be involved at all. It's just, guys, this is gross to me. It's gross. Let me know in the comments right now if you agree. So Sandra asks if any of the bartenders at the bars that Tyler and Robbie and Evan went to that night were interviewed, and the men around her whose background is in law enforcement, they seem absolutely bamboozled by why this would have happened, right? Later on in the clip, Van Acker's like, why would I have interviewed them? Like, what would they have told me? What would they have told me? He's just so over it by this point, having to answer to anyone or defend this horrendously lazy and poor police work. He's getting even more dismissive and even more defensive and even more flippant, in my opinion, especially when Sandra brings up checking video surveillance footage. Now, the reason he's defensive, in my opinion, is because it's clear that Sandra and Keith have done far more investigative work than the entire Galesburg Police Department put together, and Sandra's basically telling them things they didn't know. And so obviously it looks bad, and he's defensive.
And you said Cherry Street got checked, and there's a video in the back alley, correct?
There's a video of the back alley, yes.
Okay, do you know if they checked Monkey Business?
There is no camera at Monkey Business.
I called them, they have two.
Where at?
They said they have cameras inside and outside.
We're not aware of that.
Okay, well.
And then like Mike's, I was told that Mike's cameras was checked. Like you were saying, some places have them and some people don't.
Sure.
But they had told us that that was one of the places that was checked. And even that day when we was here, he called. But when we went back down there to check, no one had called or even tried to get back in touch with him. And he has video at that place where we were.
Yeah, they were good. It was good for 6 days, and it's literally like a block from where Tyler was found.
So Detective Van Aker, or Sergeant Van Aker, he's like, yeah, Monkey Business doesn't have cameras. He says it with his chest. He says it like he actually knows, like he actually did some research into this, right? And Sandra Halsney is like, Monkey Business does have cameras. They have 2. And he's like, oh, where are they?
Okay,
where
we
are
just
they? And
heard
she's
it.
like, listen, they have 2 cameras. He's like, well, we weren't aware of that. No shit, dude. That's the problem, that you weren't aware of that.
Y'all haven't done
Because if you'd
shit.
gone there, if you questioned the bartenders, if you talked to the manager and seen if they had surveillance cameras or not so that you could pull them and look at what was going on at the time, like you could look and see, were Evan and Robbie and Tyler all good with each other, or did there seem to be tension? Was there an argument? Like there's a million things you can garner from the surveillance video. You didn't even know they had cameras. And the fact is, in my opinion, he sat there not knowing whether or not they had cameras and told Sandra and Keith they don't have cameras. And that is honestly should be criminal.
He just hoped they didn't check themselves.
It's not right. You're just, I don't want to say lying, but you're not being honest or forthright. All right. So you heard reference to someone named Mike Martin. So let me pause this audio for a minute, give you some context before we go on. Sandra and Keith began going around to the places that they knew Tyler had been that night based on his bank statement. And everywhere they went, they were told that the police had never come by to look at video, and their video footage would only save for a limited number of days before being written over with new footage. This is why it's so important to do this kind of work within the first 48 hours. While the evidence is still fresh and available. I don't know how many times I have to say it. The manager of the Cherry Street bar told Sandra and Keith that their back camera had captured Tyler leaving with Evan around 10:30 p.m., but the other cameras were not working that night. Duffy's did not have cameras. Monkey Business did have cameras, but the police said they never went and checked them, right? Corner Connection also had cameras, but they said the police never came to check them. Bar 65 did not have cameras. This was a newer bar and restaurant. There was a company called Hanson Lumber located right next to where Tyler was found, and they had cameras, but all of their cameras were inside or on the opposite side on Academy Street. But I guess it didn't really matter anyways because the police never asked to see their cameras either. Literally, the place where he was found. Okay? There's also a convenience store called Casey's. It's located at 223 West Main, very close to where Tyler's body was found. And Sandra says, quote, the Casey's manager, Scott, was willing to give us 6 hours from 10 p.m. on the 14th to 4 a.m. on the 15th. It was 4 different cameras, 2 inside and 2 outside. He put them on a flash drive. I had to buy a new computer just to look at them as my computer was too old, end quote. On this footage from Casey's, Tyler can be seen walking northbound on West Street, crossing over West Main Street on the side of the street because there was no sidewalk. Tyler walked by Casey's at 11:48 p.m. And remember, his health data from his phone showed he stopped moving at 11:52 p.m. Here is that footage. So in this clip, you can see Tyler walking by. You can see him kind of walking through the parking lot of Casey's at the edge. And then he turns onto this side street here. And then 2 minutes later, you can see a police car. a Galesburg Police Department car cuts through the parking lot of Casey's and turns down the exact same road that Tyler just walked down. This is the last known footage of Tyler Smith. It was found by his parents, not the police. In this clip, he doesn't seem to be having trouble walking, he's not stumbling, and he is alone. Now, there would have been more footage of Tyler after this point from cameras outside of an auto body shop on Northwest Street, owned by Mike Martin. And this location was even closer to where Tyler was found and would have been located on his path there. As I said, Mike Martin did have cameras outside his business, and these cameras had night vision. And Detective Olinger had told Tyler's parents that he'd contacted Mike Martin about the video footage, but when Sandra and Keith paid a visit to Mike Martin themselves, he said that no one from the police had contacted him at all. And by that time, it was too late because the surveillance cameras erased every 7 days. So here's Sandra explaining to Sergeant Van Aker that this is frustrating because they could have gotten more information from that video.
Understand that.
So it's frustrating because the one little pieces that we could have had were kind of like.
And again, what am I getting on the video? I don't know.
It's going to tell me if he's by himself at that point, at least a block from where he was found.
I know. It's
going to help us because that's how I feel like it's been this whole time.
When did we determine that Mike Martin had cameras? How many days after?
I have no idea.
The day when he took us around.
I really don't know how long. I mean, I don't know how many days.
Because if it's over 6 days, were you guys down here with us?
I mean, there's signs all over the building. Surveillance. That's how I found it. I mean, we just drove by and you can see they have cameras.
But again, we have a drowning.
But then it's
and
like.
It was told to us it's an accidental drowning. And I have no evidence to show that there was anything else other than that.
But when we were told Mike's cameras were checked, and they weren't checked.
No, you were told that he called and that Mike never called him back. And then you went down and talked to Mike. And after you went and talked to Mike, myself and Investigator McLaughlin went and checked Mike's cameras because we looked at the system to see how long. That's when we determined how long that camera system was. We've not hid anything from you in this investigation.
But we were told they were checked. I was told that they were checked. And they weren't.
No, you were told by me that they were checked. By me. Yes.
No, I was told by. Yes, I was. I was told by Detective Olinger because I've asked him like 5 times. Did you check that?
It ain't adding up. But then it's just like.
Olinger did tell.
Motive, why, what this police, like, he wasn't even from there, like, he was barely there for, like, a day, like, you know what I'm saying, like, he wasn't even supposed to stay there for long, he was leaving the next day. It's just, like, not adding up, like, nothing's adding up, like, and what's the I'm stuttering. Hesitancy. Why did I fuck that up so bad? Hesitancy. Why did it sound wrong? Fuck it. What's the hold up with, checking camera? Like, that's the basic, like, that's literally basic, like, basic in the case. Go get the cameras. Oh, he said he'll call me at. Send the officer out there. You have a police department full. You trying to tell me? I be seeing y'all niggas just parked outside lingering, waiting to catch somebody on the speedometer, bro. Send one person down there, like, yo, like, we need to check your camera. Like, do something. Like, say, y'all the police officers. The same way I got my ass up and went and said, hey, y'all got cameras? Can I check it? Y'all could have did that too. That's it, point blank, period.
We're going to argue. I'm not going to lie about what people told me.
Obviously, Sandra's frustrated because she's like, Detective Olinger told me he checked these cameras. And Van Aker's like, no, I said I checked them by me. And then they were erased by then. And she's like, no. And both Sandra and Keith are like, no, Olinger told us he checked them. And now you're saying he didn't because he never got a hold of Mike Martin. And Van Aker's really sitting here trying to die on this hill of saying, well, why would we check all of these cameras? Why would we do all this police work? We were told it was an accident. First of all, sir, no, you were not told it was an accident. You already acknowledged that in a previous clip, where he was like, it was an accidental drowning. And Sandra was like, they didn't say accident. He's like, yeah, they didn't. But like, if they do a deeper investigation into it, if they do a coroner's inquest, what do you think they're going to find out? I don't know, dude, do a coroner's inquest and let us know what they find out, right? Because you're just assuming now it was an accident. Nobody even told you that. The autopsy determined that Tyler had died of drowning, and that as far as the autopsy examination went, there were no signs of assault. But that doesn't mean that Tyler wasn't pushed into that concrete drainage tunnel. It doesn't mean that someone else wasn't responsible for where he ended up. And as far as there being no signs of an assault, that's not even necessarily true, because there's going to be a second autopsy done that went far deeper and revealed far more. It probably took more than 30 minutes to conduct this second autopsy, which is why it was so much more detailed. Because I don't know if I told you yet, but the first autopsy that was done on Tyler, 30 minutes. That's all it took. So what I'm hearing is, as soon as the autopsy results came back, the police were over it. And even before that, they had time to go and collect surveillance footage and do some sort of investigation while waiting for the autopsy to be completed, and they didn't. Now, during this meeting, Sandra asks if they can get a fresh set of eyes on the investigation because she feels a lot was missed. She talks about how, Tyler looked when she saw him at the funeral home.
Tyler wasn't x-rayed. We don't even know if he had any broken bones. I saw the pictures of my son. His eye was black and blue. His face was swollen. And when I went to the funeral home, they said he needs makeup. I said he has just a scratch.
All right. I don't know who else would look. I mean, we can check.
I look at the pictures.
You can contact Illinois State.
I already called in, and they said that you guys would have to ask them to come in.
We can ask them. I can call Corey Peck and ask him to come take a look at the reports. And
the pictures. There's a picture. It looks like Tyler's hand had dragged. There's pictures of his shoes. There's markings on his shoes that the shoes were thrown away. The clothes were thrown away. At one point, when did they decide that they were going to investigate this? At this point, his clothes should have came back as evidence. I was not allowed to see my son that night because everything was evidence. By Sunday, there was a press release stating that there was no foul play, and that they hadn't even talked to the people yet that were with him that night. They'd already thrown his clothes away and taken him to the funeral home, and I didn't know it. His shoes were thrown away. They had scuff marks on them. One shoe they had bright white shoes on. It doesn't make sense. How do you walk through a creek and not get dirty? There were red scuff marks on his shoes as well. His pants, if you take a look, his pants, he has his belt still on, and it looked like someone maybe had pulled him into the water a little bit. His pants stayed, and his underwear is up. And his pants are down. If you look at the pictures, you can see it. This is all I do all night long.
And even when we were in your office that day, when the video come up, you said, "Well, it looks like he's got scrape marks on his shoes."
He has scuff marks on his shoes.
I have no idea where those scrape marks could have come from.
Right.
And you're making the assumption that he was walking down the creek. That's an assumption. I have no idea whether your son was walking down that creek or not.
We don't even know if someone put him down there.
Or whether he jumped over the railing.
We don't know if somebody put him over there.
Exactly. You're right.
That's the problem.
Sandra literally says, we don't even know if someone...
The whole problem is y'all didn't try to figure it out. He could have. That's not what they're saying. They're not saying, oh, he didn't drown. What they're saying is it's very fucking weird how y'all aren't putting any fucking pressure on trying to figure out how the fuck he died. Y'all just seen him near some fucking water and said, drown. Drown. That means if we were in this town and somebody died and I poured a bottle of water on their face, they would be like, must have drowned. That's how they operate. What does that make sense at? No other clues, no other investigation, just like, a little bit of water so he drowned. Okay, no. Well, let's see, what happened? How did he get here? When did he get here? Is there sights of him? Is there surveillance of him? Was anybody around? What's off with his clothes? No, y'all just seen him and put his hands in the bed and said, water drown.
Put him down in that
Don't piss
creek.
Me off.
And Sergeant Van Aker replies, "You're right, we don't." Then why did you write it off as an accident and not do any investigating to see if there was another possibility? If you don't know if someone else put him down there, dude. What are you talking about? And then Sandra mentions, hey, they threw away his clothes. They threw away his shoes. I was not allowed to see his body the night he was found because they told me it was all evidence. Tyler's body and everything on it was evidence.
Yeah.
Evidence. You're going to do an investigation or something. But then without even processing his clothes or shoes in any forensic way, not taking any samples, not doing anything, not even x-raying his body. Because remember, she was told that was going to be done. She was told by the ME, of course that's going to be done. They're very thorough. They're very professional. That wasn't done. They didn't know if he had broken bones because x-rays were never taken. They don't know if there was anything on his clothes or his shoes because those were thrown out. Like, this is an issue. When you tell her she can't see her son because the body and everything on his body is evidence, and then you just throw that evidence out like it's nothing when you've deemed it's not evidence within a few days, that's a problem. So it just blows my mind that Sandra's literally like, we don't even know how he got in that drainage ditch. We don't know if somebody put him down there. And Vanaker's like, you're right, we don't. What, dude, you're contradicting yourself. This is absolutely ludicrous.
His head, his injuries are all on the right side. His head is down and his head is left side down. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. His watch is completely broke off. At the pin, it's one of those G-Shock watches.
I can't keep listening to this police officer sound
still latched. If he took a big fall, I would assume they would have done x-rays. I know that's not your job, but if there's a possibility that there's a crime here, you would think you would take all avenues to make sure there wasn't a crime instead of just brushing it off as an accident within less than 24 hours. I'm not saying that there was a crime. There could be an accident. There could be an accident. There could have been an accident and he could have been put down there at this point. We don't know. But what little pieces that we could have had, I feel
gone.
I feel like
and they didn't
weren't done. You have to think about it. This was your son.
And just because his friend calls it in doesn't give him a clear page. Just because
it's kind of strange.
They haven't.
I'm not making assumptions. I'm just going.
I'm not saying that they did anything, but
I just feel like
happened.
you guys made an assumption once you said, "Well, his friend called him in." And
no, I didn't make an assumption off his friend calling in.
Yes, you did, dude. You did make an assumption. We heard you say it already. Should we play it back? I think we should.
If Evan would have had anything to do with him.
That sounds like an assumption to me, Vanaker. Sounds like a full-ass assumption.
That's the biggest assumption.
So Sergeant Vanaker continues with his gaslighting, or what I perceive to be his gaslighting. I'm not making any accusations, just my opinion. Allegedly, don't come from me.
We based our investigation off the fact that it was a drowning, and there was no other evidence to show that he was assaulted or beaten. It's right in the pathology report. That's it, period. He drowned.
Period.
He was not beaten. There's no other indication that anything that else led to your son's death besides drowning. That's what we base our investigation off of. I don't make any other assumptions from there. I can't. I have no evidence to go forward with. I can barely make this a criminal case and write search warrants because I have no criminal case, because it's a drowning.
It's a drowning in 3 inches of water. He wasn't even submerged. He has swelling and problems to the side of his face.
The science of drowning, okay?
I understand, but he's not like he jumped in a body of water.
You have to.
I know this. I am in the medical field.
Okay, so
I know this.
I understand it. And so then you know that if he was face down in the water for 12 to 14 to 16 hours, what kind of decomp are we going to end up with? It's different than not being submerged in the water. So the injuries to his face are not per se from an attack. It could be from decomp, which is what the pathologist is saying, because the pathologist says there's minor abrasions to the face. He's face down in water.
I can't listen to this, nigga.
Who knows? If you're saying 11:52 p.m. and he's not found until 6 o'clock the next night, it's a long time to be submerged in water, dead. And the body does have a different reaction. He's face down. His head's down towards the bottom. His feet are more elevated than his head, which just means the blood is going to pool where?
This is very interesting because Sergeant Vanaker is saying that the injuries and abrasions on Tyler's face were from decomposition, and he references the pathology report. So let's go to that pathology report that Vanaker likes to keep bringing up as his defense for why Tyler's death was not investigated as thoroughly as it should have been. And right there in the report, it literally says there are no external signs of decomposition. That's what that pathology report says. Vanaker.
Interesting.
But you're referencing the pathology report saying like, could have been external signs of decomposition, like after somebody lays there for that long, like that's what the pathology report, that's not what the pathology report says. Do you only refer to this report when it suits your narrative? Did you miss this part of the report? Did you misread this part of the report? Because Vanaker says the report states that the markings could have come from decomp, but the report does not say that at all. In fact, it says the exact opposite. There's no external signs of decomposition. So next, Sandra is going to ask about the ATM video, and this is huge. Remember that Sandra Halsney had gotten access to her son's bank statements, so she was able to see where he'd used his debit card that night. And one of the locations he had used his ATM card was at a Wells Fargo ATM right behind Monkey Business. So Sandra and Keith were told by Detective Olinger that he'd reviewed the ATM footage and Tyler was not on it. He said he had watched it from beginning to end, not once, but twice.
Now, how
And
was money
Tyler,
withdrawn?
nor his two friends, Evan and Robbie, had ever appeared on the screen. Now, Sandra knew this was impossible because she could see the $100 withdrawal on Tyler's bank statement from that ATM. And so she personally went to the Galesburg Police Department to investigate further. This is when she met up with Sergeant Van Aken, who Detective Olinger told her to consult or go to with any questions because he was on a month-long vacation. And Sergeant Van Aken continued to insist that Tyler was not on the ATM video. He's like, I'll prove it to you. I'm going to bring you in my office and play the video for you myself, okay? So they're sitting in Van Aker's office. He's putting the DVD in the computer. He's talking shit, right? In fact, according to Sandra and Keith, as he's like playing the video for them, because he hits play and it's playing, and he's like, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what the fuck you want me to do. Your son drowned, you know? As he's talking shit, saying how Tyler wasn't on the ATM video, who walks up, walks into the camera lens of the surveillance camera from Wells Fargo? Who walks up to the ATM on the screen? It's Tyler.
45 headquarters.
Go ahead.
2148 West Simmons, Weber Rental, have a failed to return on some equipment.
And they looked at this video like weeks ago.
Okay, well, can I get my DR?
3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I was told that there was nothing on it. I'll have a discussion with my investigator and tell you that.
In the meeting with Sergeant Van Aker, you can hear Sandra and Keith going in on him about this.
Well, he looked at the video from beginning to end, and your son's not on there. He looked at the beginning from beginning, your son's not on there. What the fuck do you guys want us to do? Here, let me put the video in and show you that your son's not on there, right? And then he walks through the video.
Yep.
The video we've been waiting on another 3 weeks to get, which you already had, which you said your detective had looked at it from beginning to end.
He did.
But if he looked at it from beginning to end, it'd come up just like it came up for me and you.
He did look at it from beginning to end because we played it in the same player that he played it in.
So he looked at it from beginning to end, and he didn't see it. But no, I'm just saying. I'm not arguing, but I'm just asking you a question. You said that he looked at it from beginning to end, and Tyler wasn't there.
It's impossible.
I'm going to let you guys, and what hurts me, I keep hearing you, what the fuck you want me to do? That's what really hurts.
I put the DVD in a 9-year-old computer and got
it comes right up. And you were sitting there, you look surprised. Well, you even said, well, it's no way that he looked at it from beginning to end if it pops up right now.
Anyway, if it popped up right away. But I can explain how it happened.
So this is where we're going to wrap this video. We've covered a lot today. We have a lot more to talk about, okay? Stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to talk more about how this whole ATM thing even happened, and we're going to decide if it was a genuine accident or not. There's so much more to discuss. We have the second autopsy, which definitely varies from the first autopsy. We have a lot more to talk about, trust me. So I will make sure that this video, the part 2 of this video, gets out just within a few days of this one so that you...
You know, W fucking video, justice for Tyler. These people are so incompetent and they are running the city. God save us all. God save us all. We'll save everybody in that city, bro. Because what are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? Let me give her a like. Good job, Stephanie. That is so infuriating. I would have beat somebody's ass in the police department. I know that for sure. I would have beat somebody's ass in the police department.